Welcome to this edition of COVID-19 Conversations. I'm Mitch Kruzna, and today I'd like to welcome Peter Dillon, Superintendent of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
Lots been happening in the last few months. Could you give us like a brief description of what happened like in the month of March with the COVID-19 crisis, and how did you get to where you are today, basically?
Yeah, so on or around March 13th, I think, was our last day of school, and it became obvious that COVID-19 was spreading around the country, particularly, I think, initially in Boston and in New York and maybe Washington State. So initially they called on us to close school for what was a couple weeks, and then that got extended, and then ultimately the decision was made at the governor's level to physically cancel school till the end of the year. And then over that time, we made several shifts. So the beginning thing, and this may anticipate some of your other questions, but the beginning thing was to try to just meet the kids' social emotional needs. And then as the challenge dragged on, we shifted, or this is the year of saying pivot a lot. We pivoted a couple times and shift from the social emotional piece to keeping kids engaged to really shifting to having them do rigorous academic work.
How are the students adjusting to this big change in their lives, and how, like, are you offering like counseling or any help with their emotional needs and things?
Yeah, all sorts of things. So it's a little different in each building, from the youngest kids to the middle school kids to the high school kids. But as a district, we've always really prided ourselves on having strong relationships with our students. So we tried to continue those. In the early grades, students have classroom teachers, so that classroom teacher is the hub of all activity. As they get to middle and high school, they have multiple teachers, but we worked on having kids maintain connections with an advisor or a mentor, like somebody who particularly checked in with them regularly. So we've done a lot of that. Our psychologists, social workers, clinicians have been reaching out. And we've been doing sort of all sorts of things to try to help and support young people. The other thing that's connected to it, and maybe the first thing, as this started, a lot of people lost their jobs or weren't able to work. So we really invested a ton of time and resources into providing meals for students and their families. And that started off initially as every day we'd prepare lunches and breakfast. And then over time, it shifted into providing kids and families with 3 or 4 bags of groceries every week, so they could cook more at home.
Well, that's great. It's been hard for all of us, and it's been like you're writing new territory. It's just it's unknown, and so. Has there been resources for parents to help them get their kids engaged also, or? Yeah,
I mean, and there's always more we can do. We built that pretty quickly, a website with FAQs and lists and assignments and more things and articles, and I tried to do a pretty good job of sending timely things. But the real challenge is it's overwhelming, right? The people are dealing with the economic uncertainty. For many families, you throw food insecurity on top of that. Yeah. The expectations around our health are challenging and hard. Yeah. And then the isolation's hard, right? And particularly kids thrive on interactions and seeing their peers. But as grown-ups and educators, we also thrive on that energy of having a whole class be together, and that's something we've we've really missed. So we've tried to connect with parents. We've tried to share resources. We've tried to help them out. And I think there's always more to do there.
So have you used remote learning with the teachers and students, and is there any engagement with the students and their their classmates through the internet?
Yeah, well, we have, and obviously, like, face-to-face stuff is better, or better for most people, right? It's more engaging, and it's much easier to assess where people are face-to-face. But we've been doing remote learning across sort of all different subject areas. In some places, like speech therapy, we've been really successful doing it remotely, right? It's very easy to focus, and that's great. And then in some classes, we're using intentionally remote learning as different from distance learning, because we're not setting up a system where kids are staring at screens for 6 hours a day, right? Nor are we running through a regular schedule and teaching classes in 47-minute blocks. It doesn't make sense. So lots of opportunities, lots of experiences. Some of them really resonate, and kids and families are really excited about. And some of them they struggle through, right? We did a big survey of both students and parents to get their feedback on remote learning. And there's an overwhelming consensus that people feel supported and the connections are strong. There's also, I think, a pretty strong feeling that kids aren't learning as much as they might in a regular school year. And that's something we're working hard on, particularly as we look forward, right? Because in all likelihood, when we go back to school in August or September, it's not going to be like it was a year ago.
Yeah, that was leading to one of my questions too. Is there like a plan for this coming school year in September?
Yeah, I mean, there are a dozen plans. We're really waiting for additional guidance from the Commissioner of Education and the Governor around this. It looks like there's a strong desire to open, all right, because sort of as schools go, so goes the Commonwealth. And we need people back in school because it's good and it's important and they learn. And we also need people back in school so that businesses can get going and reopen. So the details of that plan are not fully revealed. I think it'll include smaller numbers of students at school, flexibility for people who have compromised immune systems, and that could include students or teachers and staff. I think it's highly likely that we'll have some hybrid model where some of the work is remote or online and some of the work is face-to-face. I think there's a whole lot of uncertainty and unknowns around is there going to be a second wave? Where are we going to land with immunizations and testing? How do we prepare for that? We've been buying a ton of materials and supplies, masks and sanitizers and things like that. There's a possibility kids may eat in classrooms instead of lunchrooms for some time. Almost certainly there'll be an impact on large group gatherings, athletics, things like that. There's a whole lot that's uncertain. And I imagine week to week, up until school opens, we'll be making plans. And it's a little cliched, but there's that whole idea of like the only thing that's certain is how uncertain things are. I think that's really where we're at.
Yeah. So perhaps we can have another meeting and discuss maybe sometime in late July, early August, and see if there's any news on any updates for the new school year coming up.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's almost certain that there will be, and like the list just goes on, right? Like, how many kids do you put on a bus? What do you do if some number of parents decide to keep their kids home? whole host of things.
Okay. Now, is there going to be any kind of summer learning program to keep the students engaged and kind of?
Yeah. So we're doing a couple things. There are really two populations in our district that we work with a lot during the summer. So we've got a little more than 1,200 students. We're not going to try to target all 1,200 of them. We run a program called Project Connection, which is a grant-funded after-school extended year program. And we'll be running that program virtually. So again, through a distance learning model. But one of the shifts we're making there, which I think will be a model for our work going forward, is we're working with teachers and instructors to develop a box of materials and supplies that each participant will have at home, so that the work won't simply be online, but they can access those experiments and manipulatives and things in the box to do some research and learning, and then share those in some way. So that should be interesting.
Yeah.
The other group we typically work with in the summer are kids with IEPs, or individual education plans, students with disabilities. And one of the reasons we work with them year round is to provide them a wider range of opportunities. So we're going to continue to work with those students, and also in a remote learning approach, and that should be interesting. I think in both groups, what we want to try to stop is what people often refer to as the summer slide. So you make a lot of progress during the school year, and then if you stop reading and doing math and art and other fun things, then you regress a little bit. So by keeping the opportunities open, we hope to perpetuate those students' growth.
Yeah, it's important to keep them engaged. And now, like you were mentioning the sports programs and the music the bands and things. Is there going to be a way for them to keep fit and ready for the sports in the fall, or is it going to be kind of still left open for?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Most all the athletic stuff at the high school level is governed by the MIAA, the State Athletic Association. So most of the summer training people do is on their own, or a thing called captain's practices, where a group of kids are sort of self-directed, right? Like their coaches aren't around. I imagine a lot of that will continue in ways that are appropriate and safe, right? Socially distanced, things like that. As we get closer to the start of school, there are a couple of weeks where coaches can hold practices, and we'll get more guidance there. Mm-hmm. Some sports, I think it'll be fairly straightforward and easy, right? If you're on the golf team, can you figure out social distancing? Yeah, it's sort of inherent. If you're on the football or soccer team, it might be a little different, right?
Right.
But at least those sports are outside. So what happens in the context of wrestling or something else? So I think we really we wait for guidance there. Serious athletes do their best to stay in shape year round anyway. So I think they'll find the room to do that. Our track is open and people are using that safely. The other day we opened our tennis courts and people are starting to use that with specific guidelines. Like everybody brings their own tennis balls and you pick up the ones you brought, but you don't pick up your opponent's ones. So I think more guidance will come and we'll figure out ways to make that work better over time.
Okay. And the music program, the bands, that's going to be probably difficult to because they're all in a group together rehearsing and things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thinking, and there's in everything, there's sort of the state guidance, and then there's the professional association or associations connected to that.
Okay.
So it's pretty clear that singing in choruses are perceived as problematic. and that's evidenced in the state guidance around churches and synagogues and houses of worship and whether they can have choirs or not. So I think we have some work to do there. But then there are also these other instruments, all the brass instruments, that there's a lot of saliva in and around them, right? And some of the other ones, I think, like the strings and the drums matter less from a health perspective than some of the others. So hopefully we get good guidance there, and maybe we do more work in small ensembles with kids appropriately distanced than we do all 50 of them playing together at once. Right. And as long as the weather's good, I mean, maybe initially some of the band stuff is marching band stuff, and that's outside and perceived as relatively safe. When the weather turns, sort of all bets are off. Right?
That's true. Maybe do a Zoom meeting band or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some really interesting stuff with that, and some very sophisticated performers and performances from all like third grade through professionals are figuring out how to make that work. So it's neat.
There's all kinds of possibilities. So the seniors had a graduation ceremony June 7th. Can you tell us like the steps you had to take to prepare for that and making the seniors have a special day, and some of the things you had for them?
No, we worked really hard on it, and the feedback we've gotten, I think, has been great. So the big goal was in a year when we couldn't bring everybody together, typically, what could we do to really celebrate our seniors? And we came up with a plan that had about 5 or 6 things in it. One was, obviously, we couldn't go to Tanglewood, where we normally do our graduation. So we worked with Paul Cakeley, who I know you know, who runs our video and TV program at the high school, and borrowed the set from the spring production of Cinderella that didn't happen. And we took about a week to film every student walk across our stage and get a diploma. All right, and we did that in groups of 4, and then after that, we had an opportunity for those 4 students to be photographed together with a nice backdrop, and then to be photographed together with their parents. So, and then we edited, or Paul edited, all that footage together, 5 days worth of footage, in what appeared as a relatively seamless, typical graduation. Which I think was really cool. The most fun part of that for us, the rewarding part, was we had each group of 4 kids and their families there for about half an hour, 45 minutes.
Wow.
So in this year of limited social contact, the principal and I and the assistant principal probably talked more to graduates and their families than we would on a typical graduation day. Right. So that was the upside of it. Out of that, we produced some really nice photographs and gave those to the seniors as a graduation present. We also, on Sunday, after we aired the graduation on CTSB and then streamed it, we had kids come up to the high school and we gave them their diplomas. And the school committee was there. I was there. And then we lined them up for this giant car parade. And we got a lot of help from the Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, and Great Barrington police and fire departments. And the parade went up 7, down Maple Street in Stockbridge, left on Elm Street, over to West Stockbridge, back into Housatonic, through Great Barrington, and ended on Main Street in Great Barrington. And like our neighbors were wonderful. All these people were out in the roads screaming and hooting and hollering, and the kids and parents were really into it. And I think this will be a graduation that nobody's ever going to forget.
I'm going to look forward to seeing that on CTSB. That sounds quite the event. And Now, do you have any like final thoughts that you'd like to, you know, like, or anything you'd like to say to the students or the parents?
Yeah, I mean, and I mentioned this a little in sort of my graduation remarks, but we're really proud of the seniors, right? They got dealt a sort of crummy hand of cards, and they totally rose to the challenge, and we're very positive about it. I think they felt honored, and we're again really proud of them. As we go forward, we'll figure out some way, and I don't know when it'll be. Like the prom is still on hold, and that'll happen at some point, and that'll be a nice way to bring them back together and celebrate them. And it may be time for a good old fashioned barbecue in the fall or something as well. In terms of the rest of the families, like we're living in really uncertain times, and it's hard. And if people need help around food or food insecurity, we're still doing that and have the capacity to expand that. So I hope people take advantage of that. We're hoping to come up with a even more thoughtful plan for this hybrid model for the fall. We did a giant survey of parents and students around their experiences with remote learning, and learned a lot there. So we'll make some shifts and adjustments. And I'll go back to the thing I said before about the only thing that's certain is things are going to remain uncertain. We'll get information from the state. We'll share that information. We'll come up with a plan. We'll get feedback. We'll keep making adjustments. And we'll really try our hardest to do the best we can do for kids and families, so they can continue to learn and be successful. And it's not going to look the same, but we think it'll be engaging and rigorous and fun, and we'll figure that out together.
Yeah, it's great. My hats are off to you and your staff for rising to the occasion. It's like you said, it's these are uncertain times, but I guess we're writing new chapters every day on how to deal with all this. So like to thank you, Peter, for joining us today, and I'll be looking forward to talking to you again about the future plans for the coming school year. And
my pleasure. And again, and I always say this to people, if anybody has questions or wants to reach out to me, my email is peter.dillon@bhrsd.org. Please do. I'm happy to respond to things. And I really appreciate how supportive our community's been of our schools and our students in these tough times.
Yeah. It's great to see people pulling together to help each other. So Peter, we thank you, Peter Dillon, who is the Superintendent of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. I'm Mitchell Krujna, and for CTSB TV, and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. Take care. I really appreciate the time.